Welcome back to the Saved by King Jesus channel. This is Tanya. So, today we're going to be covering dinosaurs versus monsters and who created them.
You know how dinosaurs don't really exist? They never existed. They were invented by the Royal Society in 1841. Fact.
The class Dinosauria was originally defined by Sir Richard Owen of the Royal Society and Superintendent of the British Museum Natural History Department in 1842.
All dinosaur bones are replicas made by chicken bones from China. True story. And you know why you can't use real dinosaur bones? Because they claim that they're still radioactive because of the asteroid 66 million years ago.
In what was known as the Great Dinosaur Rush, or the Bone Wars, Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences and Othniel Marsh of the Peabody Museum of Natural History began a lifelong rivalry and passion for dinosaur hunting. They started out as friends, but became bitter enemies during a legendary feud involving double-crossing, slander, bribery, theft, spying, and destruction of bones by both parties. None of them once claimed to find a complete skeleton either, so all their work involved reconstructions. In fact, to this day, no complete skeleton has ever been found.
Okay? So now that you realize that dinosaurs are already an absurd farce. Absurd, guys. When you look into the bone wars and how many of them have been proven false, there is not one single skeleton of a dinosaur that exists in the world. None. The engineers have proven that none of the bodies would work. All the guts would fall out. Like a brontosaurus, stegosaurus. You can't prove the Earth was here 66 million years ago. I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but there's no evidence of anything. None. You can't carbon date fossils. They're stone. There's no actual living anything in them. You can't carbon. No one knows anything about timelines. This is all nonsense. It was invented by the Royal Society in 1841. You can look this up. I know people that have degrees in which they're paying off debt to this day in paleontology. They have whole degrees in things that are lies. It's like those things that you're looking at right there, those skeletons don't exist. They've never found a single skeleton like that. They're all invented. All. Was there giant beasts that used to exist that don't exist? Yeah, I think there was dragons.
Well, here's my thoughts on the subject. The first dinosaur fossil was named before they even had a word for dinosaurs. So it was in 1677 that Robert Plot was credited for discovering the first dinosaur bone, but his best guess as to what it belonged to was a giant human. It wasn't until William Buckland, the first professor of geology at Oxford University, that a dinosaur fossil was correctly identified for what it was. William Buckland, the first geology professor at Oxford University, described a set of dinosaur fossils and named the creature Megalosaurus, which means great lizard. Buckland thought this creature was a carnivorous, four-legged lizard that lived in both water and on land. Well, it goes to show you how much they knew. And these fossils are now kept at Oxford University Museum. However, some evidence suggests that dinosaur bones may have been discovered in Africa as early as 500 years before Robert Plot found them. But again, we go back to this, that he thought he found human bones. Okay, what's to say they weren't giant bones? And furthermore, these said dinosaurs that they may or may not have found, we know that the dinosaurs made up. They keep making up names for these things. Anyhow, the giants had monsters. There were monsters they created. And some of them could utilize the monsters' power. They actually were able to ride them into battle. And that is what they did when the Great Flood started. God turned the giants on themselves, and they went into battle against themselves, and it was Gilgamesh and Nimrod that went into battle. It was two groups of giants that went against each other. But some of them, again, like I said, rode these monsters is what they call the monsters and to battle. And there is the cover-up, everyone. That's what I believe anyways, that dinosaurs is just a mere cover-up for the monsters the giants created.
The Book of Enoch explained a group of mysterious creatures that fallen angels created today. That's what we'll be covering in the Book of Enoch. You see, the Nephilim giants are not the only hybrid beings that were created. There were also mysterious crossbreeds between animals and humans. Let me explain. The Book of Enoch mentions how the 200 Watchers experimented on humans and animals to create monstrous hybrid beings. The book reads, the 200 angels choose animals on which to perform unnatural acts, including presumably humans. 200 donkeys, 200 rams, 200 goats, 200 beasts from every animal, from every bird, from miscegenation. The outcome of the demonic corruption was violence, perversion, and a brood of monstrous beings. They defiled, they begot giants and monsters now. As we can see, the Book of Enoch referred to giants and monsters, meaning there were several different hybrids created during this time, but I really want to point out what it means when these angels gathered these animals for miscegenation. This means there was some sort of reproductive process conducted by the fallen angels, and they used animal and human DNA to accomplish their experiments regarding these twisted beings. These monstrous hybrid creatures have been documented by humanity, but is taken as mythology. But what if it's far more real than we think? The Bible tells us in the days of Noah, there were non-human hybrid creatures known as the Nephilim terrorizing humanity. Let's take a look back in time at some of the most popular half-human, half-animal hybrids documented throughout history. In Greek mythology, there is a being known as centaurs in Greek mythology. The centaurs are a race of creatures that are part horse and part man, dwelling in the mountains of Thessaly and Arcadia. This could very well be one of the outcomes of the Watchers' experiments in the Book of Enoch. This is how these creatures were created. According to Greek mythology, the centaurs were usually said to have been born of Ixion and Nephili. Ixion is a human and fathered these beings, whilst Nephili is a spiritual being. Doesn't this story sound familiar as the story goes? Nephili was a cloud made into the likeness of Hera in a plot to trick Ixion into revealing his lust for Hera to Zeus. Ixion seduced Nephilim, and from that relationship centaur were created. This is basically the same story of the fallen angels creating the hybrid beings through miscegenation. Miscegenation literally means reproduction through intimate relations. There are also other creatures in Greek mythology that are half human and half animal. They are known as sirens, although most people refer to sirens as mermaids. Now in Greek mythology, they are half bird, half human creatures. And as we know, the Book of Enoch said, the fallen angels took 200 of every bird to genetically manipulate them, which created hybrid creatures. One of the most renowned places in the world that speaks of these hybrid beings is none other than ancient Egypt. As we analyze the hieroglyphs, we see how the gods of Egypt are detailed. For example, Thoth, god of writing, wisdom, and magic, is depicted as having a bird head and a human-like body. Also, Horus has a similar appearance. As we look at the Egyptian gods, we begin to see nearly all of the gods are hybrids between animals and humans. My question is, were these hybrids worshipped as gods in ancient Egypt? I think it is possible that the creatures created by the fallen angels through miscegenation were worshipped as gods alongside the fallen angels. Since the fallen angels could have just passed the advanced spiritual knowledge to their offspring, making them indistinguishable from an angelic being themselves. As far as spiritual wisdom, one thing we must acknowledge is that the fallen angels in heaven wanted to be worshipped as gods, and they were casted to earth and were being worshipped as gods, along with their offsprings perhaps. Some of these beings are still alive today, which is why creatures such as the Mothman have allegedly been spotted. Mothman in West Virginia, folklore, is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966. He looks like he's partially a giant moth and partially a man. Two young couples fled the local woods, claiming they'd seen a terrifying creature. They recounted their story to the sheriff and reported that the entity looked human in most respects except for its 10-foot wings and glowing red eyes. Mysterious beings that are believed to exist but haven't been proven to exist have been labeled as cryptids, and these cryptid creatures have been spotted all over the world. However, there is something very important I want to point out about these creatures. They all have something in common for the most part. They all seem to look like hybrid creatures, which is why I made the comparison between the hybrids in the Book of Enoch and these mysterious cryptid creatures. The Bible did mention in Genesis 6:4 how the biblical hybrids existed before the Great Flood, and also after. From this verse, we can further imply that a possible reason we're seeing these cryptid creatures is because they survived the flood. The Great Flood was actually meant to remove these abominations, not necessarily humans. God just knew in order to cleanse the earth, He needed to remove all of the corruption as a whole. These creatures are also known as abominations. God did not intend for these beings to exist, which is why most of them were eradicated, even if we still see small signs of their existence. It's nowhere near as bad as it was in the days of old. These hybrid creatures were terrorizing humanity, and they are even described in the Book of Enoch as demonic beings. The spirits of the hybrids who perished in the Great Flood became what we now call demons. Perhaps this is why demonic creatures such as Baphomet look like a half-human, half-animal hybrid. Actually, now that I think about it, almost every demon that is depicted are all some kind of animal-human hybrid, mainly a crossbreed between a bull and a human. Let me know what you think about that segment in the comment section.
Our King Jesus didn't bring us this far to abandon us now. You were called, you were chosen. You were knit together in your mother's wombs, fearfully and wonderfully made. We are called to serve. King Jesus bless you all.
I speak the name of Jesus over you.